Hi, my name is Ignacio, and today I'm going to be refuting Robert Griffin's argument. His main claim is that business practices of private prisons encourage incarceration where it's not necessary. He had three main claims. The first one was private prisons have an incentive to maintain a high prison population. The second one was that local governments are under the pressure to meet financial obligations to fulfill their contracts. And the third one was that the prison lobby advocates advocate for criminalization for behaviors that do not really need to be criminalized. I will be arguing that for-profit prisons are necessary and will be successful with proper regulation. I will refute his argument on basis of lack of sufficiency and relevance. My main argument is that against his claim is that four prisons are necessary. Even Bobby mentioned a fact that about the alarming rate of incarceration in the United States. He mentioned the fact that the U.S. has about 25% of the world's prisoners, when we're only responsible for 5% of the total world population. So that's an obvious problem of prison overcrowding. Many people ask themselves, like, why do we turn to private companies to operate these correctional facilities? As of 2000, the United States imprisoned more than 2 million people with an incarceration rate of approximately 500 citizens per 100,000 in the population. Prison facilities, according to Van Shamrock, prison facilities are filled to 20% over capacity, and a fact that generally prompts correctional facilities to highlight the need to build more prisons. According to Colson, even so, expanding prisons has placed a large strain on already tight budgets. Bobby argues that prisons receive money for local and state government to house criminals. This is obvious. Somebody needs to pick up the cost for housing the prisoners. Furthermore, direct costs in public institutions may be difficult to isolate, such as those associated with medical care, capital costs, construction, etc., etc. According to a March 2014 article in the Prison Journal, state prisoners may not house the same type of inmates as private prisons, and they may not provide similar programs. Furthermore, the custody level of the facility, the medical need of the inmates, and the social programs provided all affect the cost of operating the prison. So in other words, it's kind of it's pretty difficult to compare the price of a for-profit and a state institution. So it's inconclusive. You can't say that one is cheaper than the other. Okay, prisoners have a great number of inmates will also have a lower per diem cost. The cost decreases the number of inmates due to the economy of scale. According to the Legislative Analyst Office, it costs around $40,000 per year to incarcerate an inmate in California. According to Perron and Pratt, the cost per diem is $3.40 cheaper. Okay, Bobby makes a claim that prison lobby advocates for criminalizations for behaviors that do not to be criminalized. He made a specific reference to an infamous case called the Cash for Kids. This incident was unfortunate, and it was an isolated case. It was illegal, and as I mentioned earlier, it's he's basically generalizing. It doesn't apply to every single profit. According to the June 11, 2014 article in the Huffington Post, private sector's contract with the government can be easily canceled. Because of this, you can expect them to perform better when it comes to providing services for the inmates. They can provide better living conditions for prisons, highly secure facility, enforcement, and rehabilitation programs. Lastly, this claim that lobbies are deployed across the country to push policies like anti-immigration laws, I believe it's totally irrelevant. Immigration laws are independent from for-profit prison policies. Bobby makes a statement that CEOs make millions of dollars. He does not specify the source or exactly how much. I'd like to make a note about his outdated sources. He cites the BBC News from 2005. That's more than a decade old. So, in conclusion, I'm refuting Big Bobby's argument. He claims that for-profit prisons institutions are detrimentally to society and the grounds that they have an incentive to maintain high prison population, to which my response is there is no need for scouting new prisoners. The numbers are staggering. Thank you.
All right, well, you identify the main proposition in the secondary claims. I think that you didn't do quite as clear a job labeling internally once you started responding those points, because you got going on a counterclaim on the first point, and then you just kind of went off and kept following your own line of argument. It wasn't until the end, when you got to the lobbying argument, that there was really a clear reference to the advocate's original claims again. I did think that you had a good counterclaim on the issue of the prison populations. The truth of the matter is that we are 20% over our capacity, so the idea that they have to go out and find more people to put in jails is a little ridiculous. With the reason that we have these for-profit prisons is because we have more people than we can handle in the jails that we have, and the alternative is we'd have to build more prisons, and instead we contract them out. So I thought your explanation on that was pretty reasonable. The whole discussion, though, of cost and services in that section was not as clear as it needed to be. It suggested that there are variations in what's being provided. And then you talk about the legislative analysts mentioning that it's $40,000 per prisoner in California. And then it sounded like you're saying the other says it's $3.40 less a day, a week, per person. I couldn't tell what the heck that argument was. That data seemed like it was inconsistent with the other information, or there's just not enough context there, so that's a little bit confusing. I don't remember you attacking any of the evidence and reasoning directly that the advocate presented there, except for the reasoning premise that that there are lots of other prisoners, and that's why we have to have these additional prisons. The issue of criminality, for instance, I did think that you responded to pretty well when you mentioned the one case, the Cash for Kids case. That one you did directly respond to the example that the advocate was providing. You said a couple of things I think you need to document that it was true, that it was illegal, that it was isolated. I think you need some evidence to support those particular points, and the fact that people went to jail as a result of participating in that would have been a good example of that very sort of thing. The Huffington Post piece of information that you have there is kind of a good summary on that argument. And then your last argument is all about directly attacking the reasoning behind the advocate's argument for lobbying. And I thought you did a good job in attacking that without necessarily presenting any evidence, except for referencing some of the evidence that you had up above. So there's a little bit of problem in labeling internally. I thought you were much more direct at responding to the advocate's evidence on that last point, and you had good counter evidence on the first point. Thank you.